Would you look at this? Two wide angles from Viltrox released in the same day, and in this video we are looking at the full-frame 14mm f4 Air series that currently sells for about $199. Links including a little discount or coupon code will be downstairs in the description. Now we are going to be testing the E-mount version, but it's also available for Nikon Z mount. As always, there's going to be equal parts optical engineering and witchcraft when it comes to these Air series lenses. We've got a lightweight composite housing with a metal lens mount. There's no buttons or dials except for the focus ring, which turns nice and smooth. Inside, we got decently fast STM motor, 7 aperture blades and 12 elements in 9 groups. The lens comes with a hood that looks like this and some front and rear lens caps. Now, why are hoods always... Yeah, there we go. Locks in place, safe and secure. There's no weather sealing, by the way, or no image stabilization or lens stabilization in this lens, but for $199, I still think you're getting a lot. Because Viltrox always packs an insane amount of punch when it comes to optical performance into every lens they make. Well, the stills and video samples that I'm going to show you in this video, they all look nice, sharp and punchy without any noticeable amount of distortion in, I'd say, normal use cases. None of these samples, by the way, have been corrected for distortion or chromatic aberration or anything like that. It's just been color graded when needed and stabilized if I had time. So yeah, that's what's going on with the samples here. So I hope you're gonna like them. They're all shot here, by the way, on the Sony a7S III, which is, well, not the ideal camera for stills maybe, but it can still show you what this lens can do. Now, flaring and ghosting can be tricky on a wide-angle lens. There's a tiny little flare or ghosting, whatever you want to call it, but I mean, it's a pretty remarkable result nonetheless, especially for a $199 lens, which I have to stop saying that. You already know that it's $199. But yeah, take a look at this again. I don't think this is the worst flare test I've seen, and I mean, we can compare it to much more expensive lenses if you want, but this here is actually pretty good. So bare bones without the hood, it's still doing a pretty good job. Good coatings, Viltrox. If we look at the autofocus performance, the STM motor does a pretty good job keeping up, and I definitely think it's fast enough for a wide-angle lens. Face and eye tracking works great here on the old a7S III, and there's not a whole lot of focus breathing either. The minimum focus distance is 13 centimeters or about 1.5 cheeseburgers, and will allow you to almost touch the front element, which I don't recommend, by the way, unless you have very clean hands. Now, bokeh is kind of a joke on a 14mm lens, but what little out of focus areas there is, I'd say they're looking as good as they can. So not any complaints when it comes to bokeh really, because there's not a whole lot to complain about. I've not seen any signs of chromatic aberration in normal conditions, and we will take a look at some test shots here in just a bit. But there's not a whole lot to report in terms of real-world use. Maybe could have been worse if we're dealing with a faster aperture instead of f4, but to me f4 still feels decent enough, even for video work in most circumstances. This here is an extreme low-light location, but it's very cozy. Now, wide angles can be a bit tricky to work with, and like the 9mm, I've taken this lens around and shot a whole bunch of side-by-sides. You'll probably recognize a couple of the locations if you look at both videos, but as someone who's used to shooting on 24 and 35, it kind of took me a while to warm up to the wider field of view. Once you kind of hit your stride, it's gonna become more easy, and just as long as you remember to fill up the frame, working with a wide angle like this is gonna give you some pretty astonishing results, whether it's creative ones or scenic, cinematic ones, or whatever you can think of that you want to use a wide angle lens for. So Who is this lens for? Well, apart from the kind of usual suspects, you got your real estate shooters, landscape photographers. It's a pretty versatile lens once you kind of get the hang of it. I think it's gonna be a great lens for vloggers, explorers, travelers, and anyone who wants to do creative projects with maybe some forced perspective. A wide angle like this can give you some pretty interesting perspectives without going to the extreme of something like a fisheye. So it's gonna be very, very versatile, especially for all of you content creators out there that sometimes need to repurpose footage for both horizontal and vertical. Having that extra amount of space to pull from is gonna make it easier for you to make that vertical cut in post. But is it worth $200? Well, if we take a look at the charts, there's once again not a whole lot to complain about optically. Viltrox never disappoint when it comes to deliver an insane amount of quality for very little money. I mean, center looks sharp, the corners looks nice, no signs of any chromatic aberration, and only a tiny bit of vignetting, which isn't a deal breaker at this price point, and it's so easily corrected in post. Now, we can get some nicer, sharper corners if we stop down a bit, but it's already looking good wide open. Another option or competitor to this lens would be the Rokinon 14mm f2.8. Now, that's also an autofocus lens. There's a lot of wide angles that are manual, but if you need or want autofocus, it's either this one for $199 or something like the Rokinon. Personally, I think this one kind of spanks the Rokinon in pretty much every category in terms of optical performance, flaring, sharpness, corner to corner, distortion. The only thing, or the only one thing the Rokinon has a leg up on the Viltrox is obviously the faster f2.8 aperture. But depending on what you're doing, depending on what you're gonna use this lens for, chances are you're gonna shoot at f4, f5.6, or maybe even f8. So, I don't think the f2.8 or f4 difference is gonna be a huge deal breaker for most people. To some, maybe, but not to everyone. But yeah, that's kind of my opinion. If you feel differently, please let me know in the comment section. I'm sure you will anyway. Now, if you want to pick one of these up, like I said in the beginning, there's going to be some links and some coupon codes down below to get you the best price and everything. And well, if you're curious, you can take a look at this video up here on that little 9mm super wide for APS-C. But that's gonna be it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, sirs.